Welcome back to another episode of ROC Boys Football. Taking a look at our 2023 NFL Draft Class running back rankings. Dill loses the hat. We're not the Hat Boys anymore.
Last second switch up.
Last second, going with the different flow again. Before we get into it, just want to say thank you, you guys, the draft community, talking prospects, talking position fits. We have a blast doing it. We appreciate all the support, especially when you get into these position rankings. Like, that's the nitty gritty. Those are the true draft fans who like evaluating prospects. That's why we love the draft. So again, if you do enjoy the content, you like talking prospects, consider subscribing to the channel. We appreciate you guys. Getting into our draft rankings, we're going through our top 5. And boys, I think we all have the same number 1 running back in this class. It's Bijan Robinson, 6 foot, 220 pounds. He's probably going to be the best running back I've evaluated since Saquon Barkley.
Yeah, I mean, there's not really much to talk about, right? I think everybody knows about Bijan at this point. 3 down back, vision, power, speed, agility, makes people miss in the open field. It's one of those guys that you talk about so much and it gets boring.
Catches like a wide out. You just like, there's not much of a hole in his game. He's been the guy since he was a true freshman when he'd break 12 tackles on a run against Oklahoma. And you're like, what is he playing high school? But I mean, he's been the guy. He's been the guy for 3 years, and now it's his turn to go be that.
And I think the question now with Bijan isn't like how does he stack up against other running backs. It's when does he go into the draft? Like the NFL is shifting away from valuing running backs, and so Bijan Robinson is possibly like the best player at his position and like the clear number 1 at his position. Mm-hmm. But he's at a position that's not necessarily the sexiest or highest of value. Like, where do you think he goes in this draft?
I think there's still front offices right now that'll probably take him earlier than we think we would take him. I'd rather go for a running back in the 2nd, 3rd round. I think it's just the value's there. But I wouldn't be surprised if he goes top 20. I mean, that's pretty easy for me to look at. I mean, the wide receivers are kind of poor. If you want a playmaker, Bijan Robinson is your guy.
That's a good point. He might be the number 1 playmaker, like offense. And that's the thing is I consider Bijan Robinson, you guys both noted it off the rip, is like he runs routes like a wide receiver. Like I see Bijan Robinson a little less like just a running back, and I see him more as like an offensive weapon in this class. And if you said it best, if you're looking for a guy to spark your offense and give you some playmaking ability that's not at the quarterback position, like Bijan Robinson is probably the guy that you can be most confident will come in year 1 and be that dude. And you have an elite running back who you're paying as a rookie deal, and you don't have to go out and pay a ton of money for a guy like Christian McCaffrey when Bijan Robinson is going to be doing it for 5 years for you.
Yeah, simple enough, right? It's just easy.
Now it gets into, so I had Bijan Robinson, I believe, going top 10 to the Eagles at 10 because they like to run the football. And again, it's really hard to kind of gauge where he's going to go. After that, though, I think it gets really not hairy, but there's you could say like 7 other running backs that could be number 2 in this class because I'm not that as high on Jahmyr Gibbs. Boys, I want to start with Jahmyr Gibbs. Where does he come into your rankings here?
I mean, I'd probably have him around 3 to 4. And again, what you mentioned, it makes it really hard to rank these guys because, again, there's not a ton separating like a Jahmyr Gibbs and a Charbonnet and even guys like Sean Tucker. For me, I think they all have some skills that you like. I don't know that any of them are like particularly complete like a Bijan Robinson, which is why he stands so far ahead of the pack. But I mean, Jahmyr Gibbs he's a guy who I think fits the modern game more. He's probably maybe second. He might have more home run capability than Bijan. I mean, he in terms of one cut back in his own scheme where he can go take it the distance, nobody did it better than him, I don't think.
Right.
No, I agree with Dill. I have him as my RB2 right now just because as a playmaker, I have him honestly above a Bijan because he can do so much with his legs. His ability to make people miss is shocking. He can fit through like tight holes in the line of scrimmage. You can even line him up as like a slot receiver if you want to. So if we're going to talk about a guy that can be a multi-use back, that's like cream of the crop right there.
Yeah, Jahmyr Gibbs, he's been I've just been pushing him a little bit more down my board as I've gotten into more running backs. And you obviously Eric Gray coming in as the number 2 running back in this class for me. I know that's a hot take. I'm prepared to defend it against you guys, but focusing on Jahmyr Gibbs, like I don't know if I'm just getting super tired of the Alvin Kamara comps. Like he isn't Alvin Kamara.
No.
Alvin Kamara is 215 pounds, has the best contact balance in the league. Jahmyr Gibbs only 38 forced missed tackles on 151 carries, and you kind of see that. Like he doesn't go through contact as well as a guy like Bijan Robinson, or quite frankly, as well as a guy like Eric Gray. I think he's more of a James Cook. He's very, very smooth when he gets to the second level, and that's why teams love James Cook. Is not only is he a phenomenal receiver, 52 or 44 catches for 400 yards. Like Jahmyr Gibbs is phenomenal catching the football. He's phenomenal in space, but I don't think he's like this complete running back that is a guy that between the tackles is going to be getting the hard 4 yards and running through people like a guy like Alvin Kamara actually does, because that's not Jahmyr Gibbs' game.
Yeah, and you worry about him with pass protection.
Yes.
You worry about that he's never been a 1,000-yard rusher. The injury history is piling up. So there's definitely things against him, but his playmaking ability is kind of what trumps it at this point. So if you're willing to take the chance on him, maybe late round 1, if he sneaks in there, or early round 2, I could see that.
Yeah, I don't see him as a round 1 guy. I think he's a top 50 guy, and I think there's a couple running backs who will be in my top 50. This is a great running back class, but I just don't see him as a complete running back like the Bijan Robinson that deserves a first round take.
Mm-hmm. No, and I don't disagree with that, because he is a guy who has to be in a complementary system. Like he's not going to be the one back,
no,
taking it 25 a game like a Kamara, like a McCat, like those guys who are at the top end of the football world. They're doing everything. They're catching passes. They're running between the tackles. They're running outside. They just do it all. And again, what you mentioned, Jahmyr Gibbs is not a in between the tackles guy. That's not where he thrives, and that's probably why you can't really take him that high. I mean, I think end of the first round for a team that wants to get a little more explosive, I think he makes sense. But no, I'd be really stunned to see him taken much higher than like 25.
Like if the Bills take him at the end of the first round, I'm going to be furious, because I think he's a James Cook. I think he's very similar to what James Cook does, and much farther from what Alvin Kamara does. And I'm seeing all the Alvin Kamara comps, and I'm over it, because it's just not there. My running back too, and I'm interested to hear where you guys have this kid. I know both of you like him. I don't know if you like him as high as me. Eric Gray out of Oklahoma, he obviously transferred from Tennessee. He can be a workhorse. And I like when you watch Eric Gray's film, his ability to make people miss at the next level and his elusive ability is there. But I also think some of the contact balance is there. He's closer to that 211 pounds. He's a guy that can bounce off tackles. He's very good out of the backfield catching the ball. Eric Gray was the most fun I've had outside of Bijan Robinson watching his film, and maybe that's why I have him so high, but he would make linebackers clean miss. I mean, this dude's shifty ability, the ability to have wiggle at the second level, it's there. Boys, where do you have Eric Gray sitting at your running back ranks?
I have him as my RB3, so I'm right there with you. I think he's closer to Kamara than Jahmyr Gibbs is. Yes. Like you said, the contact balance is there. He can catch the ball out of the backfield. It just was really fun to watch him play. And you also saw in the Senior Bowl, he was one of the most impressive players overall. So I don't really have much to say, because I agree with you completely.
And just to echo what you were saying, is there's probably nobody who can shake a guy in it quickly and get moving and keep moving on than Eric Gray. I mean, that's what stood out to me, is in a hole, he'll make a guy miss and not slow down, not miss a beat. And I think that's why he was able to generate so many. I don't know that he's got the home run speed, which is probably one of his faults, if you will. But he hits a fair amount of like those 20 to 30 yard runs, and I think a lot of that is because he is what you said, nasty in the hole, and it doesn't. He's not like, I guess if you were to compare him to a guy like Charbonnet, takes a long time to break a tackle. Eric Gray.
We'll talk about Zach Charbonnet. I'm excited to talk about him. But like Eric Gray, you watch him play, and you check his weight. He's 212 pounds. Like he doesn't run like that. The feet are a guy of like who's 195 pounds, like a Tajay Spears. But that it starts to make more sense how he's bouncing off linebackers at such a high level, because he's a big guy that also has an elite ability to make people miss at the next level. Yeah, you said it best. Like the only hole in his game is he does get caught from behind, and so he's not necessarily a guy like a Bijan or Jahmyr Gibbs that if he's gone, he's gone. Like he might get caught, but again, in terms of a complete running back, like Eric Gray is right there. We talked about Jahmyr Gibbs. He's coming in. We kind of have similar top 3 running backs. We're moving on to running back 4. I have Zach Charbonnet. He's a guy that I mean, as a true freshman at Michigan, if y'all know, we've been friends of the pod, like, we're big Michigan fans. Zach Charbonnet, there's a lot to like about him. 6'1", 225. He's a very linear running back. Like, he gets downhill, he runs through people, and he actually has some great long speed. Like, he is a fast dude. But Dill, you said it best. When it comes to like getting in and out and making people miss, that's not quite there. And that's something I value a lot. Like, when you have a linebacker in space, being able to make him miss clean as opposed to just trying to run right through him. Zach Charbonnet is a guy that's going to more just kind of run right through your chest. And there's a lot to like about him, but they're also like that, the holes in his game where he just isn't as shifty. He isn't as twitchy as some of the other guys. That's kind of why he comes in at running back 4 for me. But I do like his game a lot.
I have him at RB5. I think that he's like a one cut and go style running back. I think he can be a 3-down workhorse. I think he can catch the ball out of the backfield just fine. You did see the growth when he came from Michigan to UCLA. At Michigan, again, I thought he was just more of a bruiser, couldn't really do much else, couldn't turn the corner. But he did develop as a athlete almost at UCLA.
Yeah.
And I think the system did help him a lot there as well. But yeah, I think he's one of the few. I mean, I wouldn't say few 3-down running backs in this class, but he's up there definitely.
Yeah, and just I think I have him quite a bit lower. He's comfortably outside of my top 5, and again, I think back to it, like how I've seen his game. Like, you can say he developed at UCLA, but there's also just frankly way more space in the Pac-12, and he's a guy when he's got a lot of space, he's big and he's athletic. But again, I'm not 100% sure this guy's gonna be like working the middle of the tackles particularly well, because again, he doesn't slow down, he doesn't accelerate that fluidly. So that to me, I mean, you got guys like Sean Tucker type backs who I think have that ability to make a cut and accelerate quickly, and that they can maneuver kind of those tighter spaces a little better, like similar to what Eric Gray does. And he's just, in my opinion, he does it at a far higher level, and that's why I kind of have Charbonnet a little kind of on the outside looking in of the top 5, just because I don't know, I almost think he gets a lot of credit for having a lot of yards and whatnot, but like when I watch him at UCLA, I wasn't always impressed by the runs. It's like, man, this guy's got a lot of space and he's big and fast, but
yeah,
like when he has to meet a guy in the hole, he's not like the best at that.
He's not going to miss. He'll go right through him though. He runs the ball far.
But that, like, even you can't make big plays going through guys because like you get tied up in your ankles and you keep going, maybe you get a couple more yards, but not like Eric Gray who make a guy miss in a millisecond and just keep plugging along.
And he's a guy that like a lot of these running backs, very similar to we talked about wide receivers and tackles. Like a lot of it, what has to do with what they're going to be asked to do at the next level and like what scheme they're going into. I think Zach Charbonnet is one of my favorite backs in the class when it comes to taking that one cut and hammering it up there. But again, you said it best, like in space. He's a Big Ten running back running in the Pac-12. So he almost looks uncomfortable in space because he's like not a guy that can get in and out, stop and start really quickly. And so, I mean, there's a lot more running backs who I think are more smoother athletes, but when it comes to getting linear, getting downhill and being a bruiser, Zach Charbonnet is one of the best in the class, maybe next to Chris Rodriguez.
Yeah. The last thing I'll say is like he's not a creator, right? Like a lot of people can like create lanes for themselves as runners, being patient, like using their vision to their advantage and sneaking through like tight alleyways, but that's just not Charbonnet's game. He just wants to go downhill as fast as possible.
Running back 5. And then we'll just throw in, and again, we're going to go live on some weekends to talk about like our prospects that are outside of our top 5. Devin Achane from Texas A&M. He's a guy that I was not a huge fan of. And you guys were giving me some crap before we went live here about like, I'm not a Devin Achane fan, but at some point you have to fall in love with the speed. And I fell in love with the speed at position rank 5. I mean, he's a guy that might be the fastest player in this class entirely. I'm excited to see what he runs at the combine. And when it comes to having playmakers on the offense side of the ball, it's really hard to deal with somebody that's just the fastest football player on the field. And that is Devin Achane. And one of my biggest concerns with him, and it was kind of similar to Zach Charbonnet, is he has that more linear speed in terms of being able to get in and out. It's not as much there. He's more of a track guy. We're telling him to run a straight line. He'll do that really well. I thought you saw some of that during 2022, the ability to be more fluid of a runner as opposed to just say, one line. He also ran the ball kind of harder than I expected in 2022. He was forced to be the workhorse at Texas A&M because they couldn't really throw the ball. And so he's been a guy that kind of has slowly moved up my board because you fall in love with the speed, and then he starts to answer some of the questions about how good of an actual football player is he as opposed to just a track star.
Yeah, and I know he's not just speed because, like, you look, he's been a productive player on an offense that's been terrible for the past 2 years, probably at A&M. So he was pretty much the driver. If he wasn't making plays, that team wasn't going anywhere. And he did do that. He hit those big plays you kind of mentioned, and those are important for sure. Now, I do think it's a little rich at 5, just considering I think the back end of this class is pretty good. As much as nobody really challenges Bijan, I think that next crop comes in pretty tight, and there's a lot of guys who do a lot of good things. So I do think he's high, but I don't totally disagree because at the end of the day, he is the fastest running back in this class. He's probably – I mean, he catches the ball really well, which makes me think he can find a home somewhere in the NFL. And
he's going to find a home because of the speed. Like, a team's going to love his speed.
Yeah, I haven't watched him personally. I've just watched a lot of Texas A&M, and the only thing I will say is they didn't really have anyone else to make plays, and he was really the only thing that defenses had to stop, and they couldn't stop him. So that speaks for itself. And I think if you pair him in an offense that likes to run the ball, maybe like an Atlanta Falcons in the 3rd round, maybe pair him with Tyler Algier and kind of have a change of pace back, I think that's a perfect situation for him.
Boys, who is your top 5? Bill, we'll start with you. Coming in at running back 5, who we got?
I think if I were to do it, I would have Bijan 1, Eric Gray 2, probably. I could flip any second. I feel like
we're very high on Gray. I love that.
Yeah, I love Eric Gray. Yeah. I think I'd have Dwayne McBride 3. I think he is.
All right, talk about Dwayne McBride then.
Dwayne McBride might be the best pure runner of the football in this class in terms of like. No, like pure. Fair enough. He's not better than Bijan, but like in terms of just being able to work inside the tackles, I think nobody's better. I mean, he breaks tackles, he runs really hard, which was the big thing for me. He runs through contact. And he's got enough pop to make plays. So I actually do think you put him in like kind of a more conventional offense. I think he's the best pure runner besides Bijan Robinson. Maybe
he's my RB6, so I'm not that far off with Dill. I think he's just so smooth. You're right. He looks like he's made to play running back. I do worry about his fumbling tendencies. He had a couple games where he had multiple fumbles, and that was tough to watch. But speaking of another small school guy that he reminds me of is like Kareem Hunt coming out of Toledo. So that's what I do like him a lot. I agree with Dill, and we'll see once the draft comes, though. I think these running backs are just so close in talent. It's really just pick your poison. Like, what kind of style running back do you want?
He's a guy that I wish we got to see play more big-time football because that conference just ain't it. Like, you look at some of the teams, Middle Tennessee, Charlotte, Western Kentucky, FAU, North Texas, Louisiana. It's like those teams just don't have those athletes. And it would be kind of easy for him to stand out, but he did what he needed to do against that competition. Like, averaging 7.5 yards per carry on 233 carries is absolutely disgusting. He was that offense. I mean, when you watch his film, it's like, he like almost doesn't get tackled. Like, he's either getting like pushed, it's like he's like playing against high school.
But even you got to like go back and watch the LSU game, and he had no room to operate at all. Like, they were right on him as soon as he touched the football. But that's what I mean when like he's one of the guys who can generate yardage out of nothing and just fall forward and do kind of the simple things. But like that matters in the NFL when it feels like there's no space for running backs half the time. I mean, in college, these guys can all look awesome because the game's wide open in a lot of cases, and they're typically just so far superior athletically. But once they get into the pros, they got to have some like craftiness and some ability to do what Dwayne McBride does that I don't see from these other guys, and that's generate yards out of nothing. Like, can you get 3 yards when you would be expected to get 0? And that's why what I say when I think of him as the best pure runner behind probably Bijan. That's kind of how I'm thinking about that.
And almost 5 yards after contact per attempt, that's disgusting. Now, the one thing is 2 catches on the year. So it's like he's not an all-purpose back. He can't catch the football out of the backfield. He's had 29 receiving yards throughout his career.
The running back.
Hey, so Kenneth Walker, same thing. I mean, he wasn't a pass catcher, but he showed he could do it with the Seahawks. So you can't Can't say just yet, right?
That's true. Rock, number 5 for you.
So I have it a little bit different. So I'll just break it down 1 through 5. So I have Bijan, Jahmyr Gibbs, Eric Gray. Then I have Tank Bigsby, who's a guy that I have been so high on ever since high school. I think he's one of the few running backs that can make you miss a bunch of different ways, right? He's only 210 pounds, but he can run right through you or he can go around you. So that Auburn offense was not impressive. The Auburn offensive line was brutal. And I think he was like the lone playmaker that was able to kind of carry that team. So I'm very high on Tank Bigsby.
Yeah, he's a guy that, and you mentioned it best. Like, talk about like running backs who are in just horrible fits and horrible offenses. Like, it doesn't get much worse. Like, Auburn was so outmatched from a quarterback standpoint, from an offensive line standpoint, from a playmaker standpoint on the offensive side of the ball. Auburn just didn't have it, and they were going against SEC defenses every single week. And the only guy that would really provide any sort of spark, besides maybe Robbie Ashford a couple plays, was Tank Bigsby. He's a foot. He kind of lumps into some of those like guys who I have like 6 through 10 who are just they're damn good running backs, and there's probably 10 running backs being picked in day 2 because outside of Bijan who goes day 1, like there are so many good running backs who are gonna be able to find carries at the next level that are going to be picked in day 2. It's a very, very deep class,
and that's the only reason why I do see Bijan like who might be able to slip is because you can find someone who could kind of produce at a similar level, and you don't have to spend a first-round pick on him. You don't have to use a 5th-year rookie option on him. Yeah. It's just such a deep class.
All right, Dale. I know you have one other guy you want to talk about. Rock, I'll kick it to you for one other guy that's not in your top 5 that you really like, kind of a pet cat, if you will. Dale, start off with Sean Tucker, though, because I know he's your guy.
Yeah, I don't know why you two are so down on Sean Tucker. I feel like watching him, he's got as much acceleration as I think anyone in this class in terms of
because he's a
what is that bad? Is it bad that he has acceleration? You jumped on my throat for that.
He's a very linear running back. Like, he has good acceleration because he runs track, and you see that on the film. But in terms of being a solid running back, I don't see it as much. And we talked about it with the Devin Achane. Like, Devin Achane answered some of those questions about being an actual football player who can get in and out and break tackles. Sean Tucker, for like as hard as you think he might run, like only 2.7 yards after contact, that's not a very good mark. He didn't force a lot of missed tackles. He's a guy that if he has a piece of daylight, he's going to hit it, and he's very, very good at getting going fast quickly. But he's not a guy that I think is a great pure runner of the football in terms of the footwork, in terms of reading blocks.
Yeah, I mean, he's a one-cut guy, probably more so than some of them. But again, when you can accelerate through your daylight, that's what he does. And when he gets in a little crack of space, he can get through it. And he made a lot of big plays on an offense that, again, he's on playing teams like Clemson. When you're Syracuse, you're overmatched on almost every position. And like, he's a guy who figured out how to make it work. He put up his numbers, and I don't know. I think the acceleration he's got puts him way up there. Like, very impressive. And for me, I think that's a huge part of playing running back and that's again why I'm a little down on Charbonnet. I don't think he has that. And that's what I see from a guy like Sean Tucker who can really make things happen because he's just got the burst.
Who's your pet cat here?
Really quickly, just about Sean Tucker. I was looking back at my notes, and the first thing I said was just despises going east and west. Like, there were some times where like if he just made one jump cut to the right or just looked to the right or left, he could have had a home run. But he just does not want to go that way. He just wants to go forward. And it's just funny to watch because if that's the first thing I wrote down, I mean, it must have been jumping off the screen. So that's the only thing.
He's a track guy. He's like, I'm going to run in a straight line because that's what I do in track. And I completely agree. I think that's a massive red flag. I just don't think as a pure running back of the football, I don't know if he's I don't know if he's great.
I guess my guys really was Tank Bigsby. We can talk Chase Brown. I think there's some weird mixed feelings going on with Chase Brown. I just love the way he runs. He runs like somebody killed his dog. Like, he's just angry at the world. He's not like the biggest running back, but he's got good speed. I think that there is a place for him in the NFL. I don't know if it's in day 2, but like early day 3, I don't see why not.
Chase Brown, I'm happy you brought him up. And it was funny because I'm looking through my position ranks, and I've actually gone through a lot of running backs. So it's like I was thinking about Tajay Spears. I was thinking about like, there's so many running backs that I want to like put as like a guy that I want to talk about who's not in the top 5 because this class is so deep and good. Chase Brown's really interesting because, again, he's a guy that there's nothing that stands out like, oh, he does that at an elite level. And every single other guy, like Eric Gray, he's got great feet. Devin Achane, he's got great speed. Zach Charbonnet, like the speed and size is something you really like. There's nothing that Chase Brown's game that's like, I love that about him. And that's why I think he might slip down boards. But in terms of being a good running back, like he's so smooth. He gets to position. He's got great vision. He runs the ball hard. He does have good feet. He does have good speed. It's just nothing's elite about him. And so when there's nothing really elite about you at the running back's position, I think teams are going to try to maybe – if you're trying to take a running back at day 2, you're going to lean to like give me a track star or give me a guy who's really good out of the backfield or give me a bruiser. Chase Brown doesn't fall under any of those categories besides like I'm a damn good running back.
Right. I do think where he wins, though, is with his acceleration and his patience. Like,
yes.
You'll watch it bottleneck up in the middle of the field. You just don't know where he went. And all of a sudden, he just comes zooming out and, like, it's a touchdown. So I think that those are his best attributes. But I do see what you're saying. Like, he's like what's the saying? The jack of all trades, master of none. I think
Yeah. And he's just good. And he's fun to watch, but there's nothing that necessarily is like, he's sick. All right. I'm still like I'm making a split-second decision on a guy that I want to mention, and I think I'm going to go with the 5'6", 175-pound running back from Manhattan, Kansas.
Let's go.
Like he's so fun to watch. He's so good, but he's 5'6", he's 175 pounds. But man, when you talk about a guy that is so good in space and makes people miss, and there's an element of his game where he's so short that like I don't think linebackers like locate him behind the offensive line, and then he just like appears, and then people are chasing him. He's very good out of the backfield. There's so much you like about him, and then there's like one thing you don't like about him, and he runs the ball pretty damn hard for a guy who's 5'6", 175 pounds. He's just 5'6", 175 pounds.
Right. I think he's probably the most elusive running back in the entire draft. He can make you miss in a phone booth. So. The only thing I'll say is like the size is just going to get in his way. Like he's going to be a person like a Jarrett Patterson from UB, go Bulls, that was overlooked even though he had all this production. But I mean, he's kind of making a name for himself with the Commanders. I don't know, but you can't really draft someone like that with any sort of like high draft capital, right? It just can't happen. It'll never be like a 3-down back. You might bring him onto the field for a screen, but defenses are going to know why he's out there. So that's the only thing I'll say.
No, I mean, Deuce Vaughn again. Like, just turn the game on and watch him. He wasn't playing at like D2 football. Like you saw him against big time teams.
Are you talking about Buffalo? You're saying Buffalo's D2 football?
No,
is that where that came out of?
I'm talking about like
shot at the Mac right there.
Watch your mouth.
I mean, no, it was not. It had nothing to do with Jarrett Patterson and UV. Jarrett Patterson was awesome, but again, I'm just saying like. You don't need to think like, oh man, can this guy hold up with the big dogs? Like he played with the big dogs and he was awesome for a couple of years. I mean, you just look, he's a guy who, again, you guys kind of mentioned it, and that's kind of how I feel like what's wrong with his game besides his size. And he's like once you get yourself in that situation, if you've already been doing it against good players, like you're a good player. I don't know, you're good. He's gonna be very draftable. I think he's gonna have a good career.
You should go to the draft and just pound the table for him. You know, just like be the weirdo in the crowd, just screaming Deuce Vaughn until something happens.
Tell all those scout nerds to get their head out of their butts and be like, yeah, he's short and small, but like he's good. And he's a workhorse. Like 234 carries in 2021 for 1,400 yards. 291 carries in 2022 for 1,500 yards. Like there's not many running backs who got the volume Deuce Vaughn got, and it's because he's so good. So Deuce Vaughn's actually a perfect running back to kind of end on. Now I'm just gonna name drop him. I'm not gonna necessarily talk about him, but Israel Albacanda is like a really interesting guy. Tajay Spears is a very interesting guy. Zach Evans is obviously good, and Roshan Johnson. Those are some of and Chris Rodriguez. Those are some other guys that I really do like that have certain roles. Roshan Johnson probably being the most complete running back that I just named, that are also going to find roles in the NFL and probably going to be day 2 picks. This running back class, extremely deep. We could talk running backs for a very, very long time with how good and how many good prospects there are. Again, wanted to keep it short for you guys, and we went almost 30 minutes. We appreciate you guys checking us out again. If you do enjoy the content, you like talking prospects, consider subscribing to the channel. Let us know in the comment section who we're sleeping on. Again, this is the position that I'm most open to debate because I'm probably going to switch my position rankings. I'm sure you guys are as well. We appreciate you guys checking this out. And again, if you do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Peace.